Thousands of miles from anywhere, surrounded by the icy grip of the South Atlantic, lies a place claimed by Argentina but governed from London. It has no airport, no cities, and no indigenous population. And yet, this isolated land has played a quiet but fascinating role in polar exploration, whaling history, and geopolitical tension. South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands are located in the South Atlantic Ocean, just southeast of the Falkland Islands. In 1908, it became a Falkland Island dependency and later became a British overseas territory in 1985. It is a cold tundra environment, and the South Sandwich Islands are volcanic, with one island having a permanent lava lake on it. South Georgia was first sighted by an Englishman in 1675 and later circumnavigated by Captain Cook in 1775, where he landed on the island and claimed it as part of Great Britain, naming it after King George III. He also discovered the 8 southern islands of the South Sandwich Islands in 1775, but the northern 3 islands were not discovered until 1819 by Bellingshausen. They were named the South Sandwich Islands by Cook, after John Montagu, 4th Earl of Sandwich, and the South was used to distinguish them from the other Sandwich Islands that were in the Pacific, now called Hawaii. In the 20th century, South Georgia became a base for whaling, with 7 whaling stations opening across the island. However, as whaling became less profitable, the stations began to close. In 1908, the UK established South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands as a Falkland Island dependency, and in 1909, an administrative center was established on South Georgia. In 1927, Argentina claimed South Georgia, and in 1938, claimed the South Sandwich Islands. This will become a problem later. The reason for Argentina's claim of the islands is connected to its claim of the Falklands, its proximity to Argentina, and historical inheritance from the Spanish Empire, despite Spain never owning or claiming South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. From January 1955 to 1956, Argentina maintained a summer station on the South Sandwich Islands and a naval base from 1976 to 1982. The naval base was discovered in 1976, and the UN tried to resolve the issue diplomatically. However, no result occurred until after the Falklands War. On the 19th of March, 1982, a group of Argentine Marines, posing as scrap metal workers, occupied an abandoned whaling station on South Georgia. Then, on April 3, 1982, Argentina invaded South Georgia in the Battle of Grytviken. The island was later recaptured on the 25th of April by British forces as the Falklands War was coming to an end and Argentinian forces left the islands. To this day, the UN is trying to resolve this land dispute peacefully. However, progress has been minimal. In 1985, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands became a British overseas territory rather than a Falkland Island dependency. As a British overseas territory, the islands now had a commissioner who acts in the king's interest, the king being King Charles III. The commissioner is responsible for domestic affairs within the islands. A commissioner was assigned rather than an elected governor, which is normally who oversees a British overseas territory, because the islands have no permanent population. So a governor couldn't be voted in, so a commissioner was assigned, and the commissioner is also the governor of the Falklands. However, despite this level of semi-independence, the island receives British military protection and is represented internationally by Britain. As it now has its own government, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands has to fund itself. The islands are fully self-funded today, using revenues from fishing licenses, visitor landing fees, and stamps. Despite the islands having no permanent population, they still have their own flag, stamps, commemorative coins, and a low income tax rate of 7%, compared to the UK's income tax rate of 20 to 45%, depending on income. Today, the islands are mostly used by the British Antarctic Survey and occasionally visited by British garrisons. It has the southernmost landmass that is not included within the Antarctic Treaty, and because the islands were uninhabited by people until the British arrived and now has no permanent population, is frequently used for environmental research similar to that in Antarctica. There was another war on the islands against rats, with one of the largest rodent extermination attempts being undertaken by scientists. The rats were introduced by whaling ships in the 1700s, and they had been damaging the island's environment ever since. Rat poison was dropped by planes across 70% of the island, and in 2018, no trace of the rats could be found, showing the extermination was successful. Now, if you want to visit these polar islands, then don't worry. There are holiday packages that allow you to visit the islands as well as other islands close by, such as the Falklands. Just be willing to spend $20,000 per person, so good luck. No one knows what the future holds for these islands. Only time will tell. Will they stay British, become Argentinian, or become independent with no population? Who knows?